Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on. I just saw there's some commotion, so I kind of just snuck in. So, what's up?
This is a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror films every week. We get together, we've watched the movie, we talk about it. It is Zombie Month, so we are doing another zombie film, and this is actually a movie where we did the original a couple years ago, and we were supposed to go back and do the sequels, but it kind of just lingered behind, and finally Zombie Month is a good excuse to finally get back into it and get to the second film in the series, and that is Wreck. So this is going to be a discussion of Wreck 2, or Record, depending if you just say the full word. But of course, Wreck was the sort of the cult hit, the Spanish zombie film, found footage that came out in 2007. Wreck 2 came out in 2009. I actually saw this one in theaters because the first one kind of like came out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, this cool movie exists, and I tracked it down and watched it was probably the DVD at the time, it wasn't even HD. But Wreck 2 actually did play at one of my local theaters early 2010, and I got to see it, so that was kind of a cool experience. So we're going to get into it. We'll start spoiler free as we always do, and much like Halloween 2, this just picks up. It's the same night. It picks up from the same, the events of the first one. There's no time jump. It just gets going, and the premise here is that if you're not familiar, the events of the first one, which was all in this apartment building, is Wreck 2 opens with this SWAT team who are gearing up to go in the aftermath of the first movie, and it picks up there, and that's it. That's the premise, and they're going in with like a doctor from the Ministry of Health. Basically, it's like Spain's version of the CDC, I assume. And that's this kind of thing they're going in to investigate, and that's the movie. So, and it's hard not to even like maybe bring up aliens in a weird way, where it's almost like colonial marines going in after like the regular civilians have had to deal with this, because in the first movie, there was a couple of weapons, but there wasn't a lot going around. Whereas this movie, it's a SWAT team. They're all going in with like machine guns and shotguns. Like they're going in prepped, so it gives it a different vibe right from the get go. But that's the gist. That's the premise of the film. There's some twists and turns and stuff to talk about, of course. But Tim,
yeah,
how do you feel about Wreck 2?
I like it. It's I do think that I think it's a really good sequel. It's I do think maybe there's a little bit of the magic that's lost from the first one, but it's still like you said, like the Alien to Aliens comparison. I guess I can't help but see like SWAT members not really think of like Resident Evil 3,
Sure.
even though like although I guess technically like the first Resident Evil stars, it's kind of like a SWAT-ish kind of team or whatever, but you know what I mean.
It's even an acronym, Tim. Special Tactics and Rescue Squad.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know what I mean though. Like Resident Evil 3 is like a bit more actiony than kind of the others, but so I think in general I just prefer a little bit more of the kind of slow burn creepy horror versus like the very excitable action. But I don't want to sound like I'm degrading it too much, because it is a very fun like solid follow-up. I think they find some like new inventive found footage things to do, like using the like SWAT members kind of have these, well, I guess they're like kind of like body cameras or something like that.
So there's the main camera that obviously is the main one we're following, but all the other three members all have like cameras in their helmets, and every so often the main guy who's holding the camera can sort of like patch that in, and we cut to that instead. So they use some new mechanics, and there's more than that as well, which we can't really spoil, but there is some more inventive like camera stuff later on that's interesting.
Yeah. So just to finish up my thoughts, like no, it's it's very fun. Fun follow-up.
Yeah, IMDb has this listed as an adventure movie, and I'm like, really? Adventure?
Yeah, I posted about this because I think last month in October I watched the first one. And if you look at the first one, they have it listed as like a horror not even horror, like a fantasy movie.
Well, to be fair, like IMDb puts them in alphabetical order, so if there's more than 3, you don't see what it is. So horror will still be there, but I think putting the word adventure is just really weird. Like,
Yeah,
same with fantasy. I get action. I get why the second one, especially, you'd call it action horror. I understand that, but
yeah, it's baffling to me.
it's weird.
Like, I don't know if people still have that residual like thing where they don't like calling a horror movie or whatever, but I think these are just like the action I get, and then but these are horror movies. Come on. What is this weird adventure fantasy bullshit?
It's weird. I like the movie a lot. It's one of these things where I remembered really digging it when I saw it the first time, and I'd kind of forgotten a lot about it. All and just it was a solid follow up that continued the night of. It was more of the same night with the SWAT team and some other characters. And watching it again, I do really appreciate it. I think it makes for a really great double feature with the first one. And it's not that I'm saying 3 or 4 aren't worth watching, but they're very separate and they're very different in tone and different ideas. This feels very in tone with the first one. It takes what was revealed at the end of the first one, which was kind of a unique take on where the zombie virus comes from. I'll sort of save that for spoilers, even though technically it's a spoiler for the first movie rather than the second movie, but it does kind of take that and use it in a way to like shake things up and sort of add more to the movie as it goes on. It doesn't take as long to get to the quote unquote action because there shouldn't be as much of a slow build, but there is kind of that fun thing of like, well, we know what's in there and we know some of the locations, and it's actually kind of fun, intense watching these characters, this SWAT team and this doctor, go towards like doors, and we know what's behind that door, or in theory we do. We don't know what's changed since we saw it, but it adds to the intriguing elements of like, okay, so we remember this character was here in the first film, so where are they now? And there's that kind of feeling to it. It's very lean. It's 85 minutes. It's brisk. It has great ideas. It knows what it's doing with the ideas. It gets to those points, and the pacing is kind of phenomenal. I think it's about as great as a sequel as you can get without equaling or surpassing the first one. Because I would say the first one's better. I don't disagree with that, but I think the bar or the differentiator is so small that I think this is about as successful. But again, without being the sort of movie where people then argue is it better than the first one or not. It's Alien to Aliens. To go back to that example, that's one where there's legitimately camps of people who will argue either way because and basically I come down to they're both 10 out of 10s, and that's just kind of how it is. Yeah. Here I do think Rec 2 is a great sequel. It's a great movie, and it's just about on par with the first one. And I think it's maybe just that there's less surprises because of the first one's already happened, but that is really good. I think it's a solid follow up.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
So, good stuff. It's visceral. The zombies, which again have a little bit more going for them this time now that we know kind of where they come from, and I could almost argue or see some people arguing that they aren't. Are they technically zombies? Because I was thinking about this as I was watching it. Are they technically zombies anymore, given what it is? And I would say they absolutely are zombies. I mean, not only just because they operate like zombies and the movie plays out like a zombie movie, but because zombies have different origins. Like the most traditional one is the scientist has created like a virus, right? But then you also have someone's magically brought someone back from the dead and that started zombies, or it's a mystery like Night of the Living Dead. Romero never quite solidified why or where it came from. Yeah. It coming from the source it does in this movie is no less valid as a source. Like that was one of the things I liked about the end of the first one. It was such a fascinating idea. Like, it came from this. Yeah. That's kind of neat. Totally. But yeah, so there was that.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I know like some people argue with that stuff, but like, I mean, really, if there's like a level of some type of virus or sickness that is spread, especially through like biting or I guess maybe like scratching or whatever, but and to the point where and it like you lose your basically like your sense of being able to reason or use your brain, and you just want to attack or eat or kill people. Like, to me, that's like a zombie.
Yeah, pretty much. there's some borderline examples, but I think the reason why I was bringing that up or why I was thinking about it is because we talked about how some people don't like to call 28 Days Later a zombie movie,
Right, yeah,
and it's such a technicality. I think it's like it's still a zombie movie. It still plays like a zombie movie. Just because if you want to technically argue they don't tick this box, it's just kind of a weird thing to me.
Yeah, but I mean, I totally agree though. Like, I do like the whole origin and stuff. It gives it like, you know, this nice little wrinkle, and to the point though too where like, you know, it's not just like all these like same zombies that you're dealing with. There's also kind of feels like an end boss, you know, too, that they kind of go up against.
And there's even kind of not a sub boss, but like, yeah, video games typically they'll introduce like a tougher enemy that's like a tougher regular enemy like halfway through or 2/3 through. It kind of does that as well. And then there's also the end boss. So it's very video gamey in that way. And being that my favorite video game of all time is Resident Evil Remake, I mean, I have no problem with that in a zombie movie. It works. So no, I think this movie does a really good job of playing upon what you already know, and it quite smartly sets some things up early on in the movie that then pays off in interesting ways later on, especially with some things that I don't even expect it to do anything with. It's just like, oh, this was a setup earlier on. I didn't even realize it was a setup. Maybe I should have. Maybe it was more obvious to some people, but it's like, oh, that's actually kind of neat how it's using the things that it's already established in ways with other perspectives, and I don't know, it's just cool stuff. No, it's a fun time. It's a fun, exhilarating 85 minutes, and
is I forget, was it the same directors or?
I believe so. Yeah, same directors.
Oh no, okay.
I think they actually did the same. I think the same directors did all four, or at least maybe because it was two directors, and I think at least one of them does all four.
Okay, that's cool.
I could be wrong. Let me go. So let me check Rec 3. Yeah, Rec 3 is just one of the two directors. And then Rec 4. Oh no, I didn't do Rec 4. Oh, never mind. So the fourth one's a different person then.
Is the fourth one the one that starts at a wedding?
No, that's the third one.
That's the okay. Alright. Because okay. I've seen.
So the fourth one's the other director. So it's two people who do 1 and 2, and then one of them does 3, one of them does 4. So that's intriguing.
Yeah, so I've seen 3 then. I don't know if I've actually seen 4.
I did. And honestly, I don't really remember it that well, so I'm actually really curious to see that one again.
Okay.
I'm curious to. I think there are interesting sequels to talk about because they are so different from the first two.
Yeah. So
especially, even just the fact that the found footage element goes away, and because one of the things that I appreciate about this film is that it keeps adding more layers to the found footage, and it sort of does these different techniques with it and shakes it up and makes it feel fresh, but still stays true to it. And I think it's interesting that when they went to make the third one, they said, okay, we'll start this off as a sort of wedding like video, so it's found footage. But there's a point in the movie, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but to say that Rec 3, after a certain point, stops being found footage and just becomes a regular movie. And I do think that's the acknowledgement that, we can't keep the gimmick going forever. Like, we've done everything we wanted to do with it, and we can't do anything else with it, so let's just do a normal movie now, because people want more of the story or more, zombie action, so here we go. But yeah, I think Rec 2 is a really solid sequel. I think it's one of the better sequels to a new movie in the last couple of decades.
Oh, sure.
That I've seen. So
yeah.
So I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Bordenau, Al Tresman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. I should say at the time of recording, not the month, because this is being pre-recorded for, I think, March. Happy March, everyone. That's what this is. It's Zombie Month. It's not March, it's Zombie Month, right? That's the important part. So yeah, if you want to go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can support us for as little as $1 per month. The one of the higher tiers, of course, is the producer tier, which is the names I just read, but you can support us for as $1 per month, and that'll get you access to the back catalogue of bonus episodes. And of course, at the $5 tier, you get early access to episodes, so go and have a look and see if you're interested. Plus, there's bonuses for other shows that we do in MailFuzz TV. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in support us. You can also support us for absolutely nothing by hitting the like button on YouTube. You can just hit that button and it helps us out a lot. YouTube will recommend us out a bit more if you do so. So please do find any of these ways to support us. Also, of course, commenting, subscribing, sharing us out on the Twitters. All good, valid options. So thank you. All right. So full spoilers then for Rec 2 from this point forward. So yeah, we have to talk about the end of the first movie, of course, is that they get to this penthouse and it's revealed that there was a priest up there who had a possessed girl, and that the possessed girl's blood is actually the source of the zombie virus. And that was a really cool reveal at the end of the first one. And the first movie ended with the specific moment of the reporter, the main character, being pulled away from the camera, and that was kind of your big shock horror ending. So right away, this movie is like, okay, is she still there? And if she is, is she still her? And you're asking these questions. But one of the reveals early on, once the chaos starts, is that the doctor who's been sent in with the SWAT team is not a doctor. He's actually a priest. And I love that he actually reveals it by pulling away. He's actually got his collar on and he's got it covered, so he pulls away the covering. It's like, holy shit, he's a priest. And the idea that he's here to actually, the mission he has is to retrieve the blood, the original sample of blood from the possessed girl, because they can maybe make an antidote with it. And it was in this building because it was meant to be low key and no one was meant to know what was going on and all the rest of it. But that becomes kind of the mission, and that's one of the things that again separates it from the original movie. Is the original movie, it was just about surviving and getting out. That was it. That was the only goal. This movie's like, no, we actually have a mission. We have a specific task in mind that we have to succeed in. It's not just about surviving, it's about actually saving the world and kind of stopping this from spreading. It is kind of interesting though, watching this in 2020. No, obviously it's zombies. It's completely different, but there is a lot of talk about the quarantine. There's a lot of talk at the start, like the SWAT team are complaining they have to wear a mask, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But I think all this stuff is pretty solid, because we dig a bit more into because he if you did forget what the end of the first one was, the priest character eventually does explain a lot of this. He explains it to the SWAT team because they're obviously demanding answers. They want to know what sort of situation they're in, and there's a lot of cool stuff with the mythology here. We find out that not only was he trying to do this previous priest who was up here in the penthouse was doing testing, but also there's like a secret like hallway where there was various possessed children in rooms, and that was kind of what I was talking about with the sort of the tougher enemy or the creepier enemy that's introduced later on, because they're kind of crawling on the ceilings and they're really creepy. Especially the scene where the one SWAT member goes into the crawl space, to find the hidden blood vial.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite scenes, and all this stuff with these kind of creepy zombie kids. I absolutely loved. I mean, I hate to keep comparing stuff to Resident Evil, but they kind of reminded me of Lickers a little bit.
Oh, I could see it. Yeah,
crawling on the ceiling, but just a great thing to introduce, and just leads to a lot of really cool, fun moments with them.
Yeah, especially because he just gets out in time and shuts the sort of grill, but you can see three of these kids all kind of clawing at the door and try to get through.
And it's a really good lead up, because as soon as he goes into whatever the vent or crawl space or whatever it is, it's such a tight, narrow space that he's not just gonna get it and go out easy peasy. There's gonna be something to complicate it, and then after he gets the vial of blood, it's things are going a little too well, and then when you kind of start hearing some noises and people are starting being like, hey, all right, come on, you gotta come back out now. It's a really nice ramp up to the tension that and then when you do see the kind of the holy shit moment of the kids starting to come, it's just a great burst of adrenaline.
And just going back to the video game comparison, it does that thing, because in video games typically when you get a new enemy like this, you get a big introduction to just one on its own, and the movie kind of does that as well here, where there's one of these kids is in the room and they have to fight it, and the SWAT are still really skeptical about just killing these things, and it's it's a kid, we can't shoot it, and the priest actually grabs one of the shotguns and just blows its head off. like on his own. He's like, no, it's gone. Like we have to kill these things. You have to shoot them in the head. But just the idea that it has this big introduction to one of them, and then we get a scene where, no, here's a swarm. There's multiple of these things, and they're dangerous, and they're like, okay, you could fend off one, but now it's one guy versus 3 of these kids, and it's really, it really sets up how tough and like scary it is.
Yeah. Now, if I do have maybe like kind of a minor complaint about the movie, and for me, it's more of like a preference thing. Like, it's not that it doesn't make sense or it shouldn't be doing this, but like it feels like so much of the movie is like screaming. Like all the characters are just constantly screaming at each other. It's just constantly like what are we doing? What's going on? Tell us. Like we need to get the blood vial. Like like I'll tell you later. Like like blah, blah, blah. Like the priest is yelling at the SWAT people. The SWAT people are yelling at the priest. Then the zombies show up and they're like doing their zombie scream and running, and the people. And obviously people should be screaming, in this situation, but it's just, when you're watching the movie after a while, it's like, all right, come on, guys, we need a breather here.
I get you, yeah. It's one of those things that never bothered me as I was watching it, but yeah, you're right. Like, a lot of the movie's yelling. I mean, at least it feels natural in the situation. Like, it's not like it's like random yelling for yelling's sake.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be though. Like this is a it's not a slow burn horror movie. Like this is like kind of like an adrenaline fueled like.
Honest, Tim, that was the exact word I was about to use. Adrenaline. It's just an adrenaline movie, which goes with the fast zombies, I suppose. When you think about it. Yeah. I like all that stuff about sort of unraveling this mythology and. Okay, we have to get the blood, and then the idea that he has to test the blood once they've got it, because they're like, okay, we can leave now, we can leave, and again, no, we have to test it, make sure it's the right blood, and he basically tests it by putting a crucifix into the blood, and it sets the blood on fire, and it's a really cool little effect because it bubbles first and then sets on fire, but unfortunately, the rest of the test tube also catches fire and like smashes, and it's like, wait, shit, we need that. And he still won't let them go because they'll only get let out when this priest like gives like the verbal okay over the radio to let them out.
Now, my thing with this is like, all right, so he drops the vial on the floor, and like the priest is freaking out and stuff, but like I don't know, how much blood do you really need? Like, is there really not enough that you can't like scoop or suck up like like some drops on the floor? Like, do you really need like a whole full vial?
It's funny you said that because I thought he wasted far too much for the test because he poured out like half the vial onto this little petri dish. But yeah, that's fair. But so basically, then it becomes this harder mission where he's like, "No, we have to find her. She may still be in the building. If we can find the original." And that's like we saw her at the end of the last movie. She was scary as shit. I mean, to go back to the Resident Evil comparison, she's very Lisa Trevor. She's absolutely terrifying walking around with that hammer. So so the idea that they have to willingly go in to try and find her is actually a really good again, it's this good mechanical device where we already know what this thing is they're talking about. So when they say we have to go and try and like put a needle in her and take out some blood, are you shitting me? Like this thing is dangerous. Like she is like demonic and like awful and like, and naked.
Well, at least the breasts are like swinging around.
She is. I'm not sure why that makes it scarier. I mean, it does. I mean, it's creepier, but yeah, fair. Okay. But you've got all this going on and like unraveling all this, and as this is happening, there's some various instances. Like one of the SWAT team members gets turned into a zombie, and this is where it starts to use some of the the possession stuff as well and mixes it in with the zombies because. The zombie does get repelled a little bit with a crucifix and is trapped in a room where the priest puts a knife in the door and like wraps his rosary around it, but again, this is why these good things were set up because this comes back up later when other characters are coming towards the door and they don't know what's inside it, and you're just seeing this thing. It's like, oh wait a minute, don't open that door. There's a zombie in there, and that stuff's really effective. But and then later on he tries to sort of talk, and this is maybe the only thing that feels a little bit like maybe stretching outside of zombie territory for me is the fact that he can actually talk to a zombie as if it's a possessed person. at a certain point.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. It's like it fits with the like what they're doing in the movie, but it is definitely the moment the most it ever feels like. This is a bit less zombie like now because it's talking, but whatever. But it's right around this point. There's a scene where they have to like tackle this girl zombie, and they're kind of like fighting her off, and the camera's getting knocked around, and the camera gets destroyed. And there's a tease earlier on where they see some civilians in the building, and it's like, wait, where did they come from? And it mentions, and it's like, hey, they've got a camera, we have to get that and confiscate it. Like, we can't have them seeing anything. And when the camera's destroyed and the movie goes black, then it starts up, and we actually cut back to earlier in the timeline where this, like, these like 3 teenagers have got like a camcorder, and they're like recording them doing stupid stuff with fireworks, with a blow up doll. But then they see this quarantine thing happen, and they're just idiot kids who decide to follow. And this is a neat callback to the first one: is that the dad who went out to get medicine, who they were expecting to come back, like he wants to get in the building because his wife and daughter are in there. And there's a firefighter who wants to get in there because like all of his friends are now like trapped in there from the first movie. So they both like sneak in through the sewer, and the kids follow them, and so that's how they end up in the building. But this was just a really fun kind of like shake up of the, because you were talking about earlier how you needed a break from all the yelling and screaming, and I thought this, because this is exactly at the 40-minute mark. This is exactly halfway through the movie. It decides to like go back to this. Okay, we're back to like it slowing down again because it's the characters who are just like, oh, what's going on? There's something around the building. It is a breather. Yeah. It's a literal breather exactly halfway through the runtime.
That's true, yeah.
But once they get in the building, of course, they find out that the sewer exit's been welded shut because, again, the people that try to quarantine this have thought of this and have sealed it. Did you feel really uneasy when the teenagers found the gun?
Yeah, especially like since like the one kid seems to like be like incapable of not shooting it. Like,
yeah, he fires.
I feel like he gets off like 2 or 3 times. Like.
Yeah, he fires it a couple of times by accident, and just it's just for if nothing else. Not only is it obviously dangerous that he's firing a gun and it might hit someone, like. I'm pretty sure these zombies hear things, and the gun's pretty loud.
Right. Yeah.
This is a pretty bad thing to be doing. So we sort of follow them for a little bit, and there's a great scene in one of the apartment buildings where they actually kill a zombie with a firework, like a rocket. They stick it in the zombie's face. Cool. It's a really fun sequence. And it's really different again to all just the shooting and the stuff. Honestly, there's not a ton of gore necessarily, but every time there is something. It does look good. Like all these moments really stick out, I think. But they end up, letting the zombie out of the closet. The husband gets bit, so they have to end up, shooting him. Obviously,
he like falls down like the stairway.
That's right. Because we saw that from the perspective of the SWAT team before we see all this stuff. So we get both sides of that, and it's actually when they're wrestling the zombie in the apartment that eventually the SWAT team come in and they confiscate the camera. And this is one of these things where, okay, so this is how they get another camera because these kids have brought one in. But as they're actually encountering each other for the first time and they're yelling at each other and like finding out what's happening, and the kids are all scared. And in fact, even before we get to that, I should probably mention there's the zombie SWAT team member they let out of the room. Like the teenage girl has to shoot him in the head. And before she does that, though, she accidentally hits the firefighter. But the firefighter doesn't get bit by a zombie. He actually gets shot in the head by accident by the girl when she's trying to shoot the other guy. Which, I'll be honest, I kind of love, because how many of these zombie movies have characters who have never fired a gun before? Like, having to use firearms.
Instantly, like...
like, so I actually kind of appreciate just how bad these kids are with this gun, because they shouldn't be good at it. It should be, rough and... tough. I didn't mean that right, but anyway.
No, like totally, and especially like this is another country, so I'm assuming like it's not as like gun crazy as like America.
I think it's more lax than the UK, but I don't know to what extent.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know, like I don't know, like I feel like in an American movie you could maybe have like a character like say like some dumb thing like, yeah, my daddy took me to the firing range when I was a kid or something, but I don't know if that's as big like overseas or whatever. But no, like it's a good point, like that it's a very like dangerous weapon that like even if you're someone that like has like a good aim and like a video game or something. Like it's not going to automatically translate to being good there, and especially with a very tense, chaotic situation. Like, yeah, you're probably going to mess up and not be that very good at it.
So here's I googled, just I was curious what the gun laws are in Spain. So this is just the Google answer at the top. The regulation of guns in Spain is highly restrictive. The bearing of arms by civilians is not considered a right, but a privilege that may be granted by the government if legal conditions are met. Automatic weapons are strictly forbidden to civilians. And just sort of going down to a Reddit thread of all things. So basically, so there's no carry and conceal unless you have unless you're a police officer or something. I think when I said they're more relaxed in the UK, I think I just meant because I've heard that you do see a lot more police walking around with guns. Because in the UK, police don't carry guns unless you're a specific, we don't call it SWAT, but like a SWAT sort of thing, or an airport police. Police don't carry guns, right? It's specifically like if there's a policeman with a gun who's been posted somewhere, we specifically refer to that as an armed policeman because that's the rare example. Like regular police don't wear them. You know what I mean? But to get licenses, you have to basically you have to pass exams. You have to do a psychological test. I think the sounds of it.
Sounds like you basically just don't have to have freedom. Is what you're telling me?
Really? Is that what you're doing? The American freedom argument? This is one freedom I think a lot of people would happily do without to me.
Hey, all I know is I don't feel safe unless I have about a good 30 to 40 guns in my house at all times.
Do you have a closet just like you have like a little armory?
Oh yeah, I got a little one. I've been making one for the baby. Because he's got to have his guns. Of course, the dogs and the cats each have their own little pet guns. Yeah. So thank God I live in a free country. Yeah,
apparently you have to pass a psychological, medical, and eye exam. You have to have no criminal past. You have to have a police certificate that you have never been involved in a crime that's been violent or anything like that. It sounds like a lot of good restrictions that maybe other countries should probably consider. I mean, I don't know how effective it is. Again, I'm just Googling this quickly, but...
I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing that it would not make sense for anyone to be against, but hey, who knows?
People be weird. I mean, we're in a pandemic and some people think that wearing a mask is oppression, which maybe shows how privileged some of these assholes are, but that's whatever.
Look forward to the YouTube comments on this one where people just...
It's funny, actually. I was booking an eye test the other day, and when I was setting up, and it was like a sort of pre-questionnaire, just so you can, quicks things up when you get there. Which, by the way, is for another month. Like it's like a month-long wait for an eye test right now.
Wow.
But one of the things they mentioned is that would you consider? They always ask you if you consider going contact lenses, and I don't want them. I'm good. But one of the things they've put in the thing now is that they specifically say, right now, glasses steam up when you're wearing a mask. So would you consider contact lenses because of that? And they do. Like whenever I have to wear my mask, it does. Like your glasses. I've actually just taken my glasses off when I'm wearing my mask, like in a shop or something like that, because you do. Your glasses just steam up constantly from your breath.
You get little windshield wipers.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'll do. Anyway, we tangented a little bit there. But yeah, the point is that the gun feels dangerous in the kids' hands, and it feels like that they're ill-equipped to use it, and I appreciate that. But one of the things here that I really dig is that, so you're thinking to yourself, okay, they've got a new camera that's working because these kids have brought one in. However, as they're like having this debate about what to do and with the kids and whatnot, especially since one of the three kids has been bit, and he ends up being the one that the priest questions with the crucifix and tries to get to talk about the location of the original girl, is that the battery on the camera is flashing. It's dead. It's almost dead. And you're sitting going, wait a minute. How are we going to deal with this? The camera's almost dead. How are we going to see the rest of the movie? And again, this is about 20-25 minutes from the end. So it's very neatly split up in the terms of all the sections. But we just see a figure out of focus walking in, in the distance, and it goes into focus. And who is it? It's the reporter from the first movie, holding her camera. So there is something kind of neat, and this is a really weird thing that I've never seen in any other movie, but there's kind of a weird feeling to be like, we're on the original camera now again. We're actually back on the camera that the first movie was shot on, and there's something weirdly kind of like, not nostalgic, but I don't know, there's like a weird feeling of like comfort or reverence because we're back on the original camera. I don't know, it's a weird thing to describe, but
it feels like a little important, and I mean, I think it's a testament to just how well done the first movie was, because I mean, even other found footage movies that I like, I still wouldn't have that relevance for like the equipment or whatever. Like I think maybe the Blair Witch Project would probably be the only other one maybe you could get away with that. But yeah, like it's not like Paranormal Activity or something. Like I don't give a shit if they're using the same camera or whatever.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning. You probably, maybe if you've not seen this, you just listen to us talk about it. Like, what's their excuse for constantly filming in this one? It's basically like it's the orders of the priest. The priest is like, no, we need to have all this documented for future, studying, so we can figure things out. Like he is insisting that they're constantly filming. So there is a reason presented in there. Of course, the big thing here though with this is that we introduce is Angela? Is that the name of the character from the first one?
Maybe.
That sounds right. I think these are. This cast is in order of appearance. Oh, that's annoying because she's. Yeah, Angela. Yeah. So we're like, wait, she's acting normal. The last we saw of her, and the start of the movie reminds you of this. The opening shot of this movie is the final shot of the first one.
Yeah.
Like we're like, but she's acting normal. Is she like evil? Is she gonna like? Is she up to something? Like, is this really her? You're sort of asking these questions.
Yeah, immediately puts a lot of questions like running through your head.
Yeah, but everything she's saying to them does kind of sound like it's real. Like when she talks about seeing the girl and she says it's in the penthouse. It feels like she's just being honest and saying the things that she would be saying anyway. But in the back of your head, you're like, but you got grabbed, you got taken. So what's going on here? And they find out. They found another hidden place in the penthouse, and I actually really loved this reveal because obviously in the end of the first movie we went into this location. We went into this place where they found the possessed woman, and we had the whole night vision sequence at the end of the first film. And I kind of love that here, the reason why, even despite the fact that all of the characters went into this penthouse multiple times looking for stuff, they never found it, is because it's like a secret thing that's hidden and can only be seen with night vision. And it's almost like it reveals another dimension in night vision because this secret door. And at first you think, oh, it's just like a trick door that you can't see without the night vision. But once they get into the sort of secret lab area, like when the night vision's off and they've got the light on, it's just tables with equipment and stuff. But then when they turn the night vision on, there's like a weird stone bath and like stuff and whatever.
It makes it really creepy. It gives it this kind of like otherworldly, supernatural kind of feeling to it, which again, they've kind of set up it is what's going on like with these zombies. There is this kind of like demonic presence to it, so it's it fits like quite nicely, and it just makes it kind of weird and creepy.
It's a really interesting mechanic again to tie this to the night vision. Again, another camera mechanic of like, okay, there's two settings, we can see different things depending on which setting we're on. Is a really interesting little just a mechanic in terms of the scene and how it plays out. And so at this point we've got the last SWAT member holding the camera, who's been holding the thing the whole time, and you've got the priest, and you've got Angela, and like there's a whole sequence here where this woman is blind, right? The possessed woman is blind. She's just listening for them, so they're all standing quiet, and the priest has got a syringe in his hand, like he's going to just sneak up and like take some blood. And I'm like, are you nuts? Like she's going to, and she's holding a hammer. In fact, one of my favorite moments in this whole sequence is that whole thing where the camera guy gets knocked down and the camera's just sort of lying there looking at something. That actually happens before anyone dies. It's just sort of like it gets knocked out of his hand. So, but while it's on the floor, the hammer's sitting in front of it, And there's a whole moment here where the camera guy is like looking for the camera in the dark and he can't find it, and he's like rummaging around and he's getting closer and closer, and just before he gets to where the hammer is, you see a little bit of like either blood or like ooze like dripping onto it, and then it's picked up out of frame. And you're like, oh shit! It really plays with the suspense and the beat to beat kind of like tension that's building throughout, and these visual moments.
And I really, really just love the way, this creature, like the way it looks and the way it moves. It's just very unnatural. It's kind of like animalistic, I guess. Like, the way it seems like very, like not really sure of its surroundings. And it almost seems like it's kind of like slowly going along, like trying to find like some prey or something. And then once it is alerted, it just becomes so like brutal and like frenzied. It's just such a cool like design, and I like all the thought put into just like the way it moves around and stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's super creepy, and it's a wonderful performance for sure. And from here, basically, the camera guy gets killed, the camera's down. The radio that the priest is wearing that he's using to talk to the outside like starts talking to him, and that's kind of what makes the girl kind of attack him with a hammer. But he's not quite dead, and then Angela actually shoots the priest and shoots the camera guy, and it's like, okay, so this is our turn. And she gets on top of the priest while he's not quite dead yet. He's just sort of lying there, and she's like, make the call, tell them that there's one survivor and that she's coming outside. And she's like, and he refuses. He refuses to let her out, and we get like a sort of flashback to like basically what happened after the end of the first movie. And what I liked about this is you can actually hear on the other side of the door the SWAT team like almost about to come in with the battering ram. So it actually like established this timeline where the start of this movie is actually a little bit before the end of the first one. Like
right.
But so that's really cool. But you see like the possessed girl like pass on like this like parasite almost mouth to mouth. It's really disgusting. But it's earlier on in the film it set up the idea that the zombies can actually talk with someone's voice, like someone else's voice, and Angela can do this now too. So she actually just uses the guy's voice to let him know that she's going to get out and that this thing's going to get out into the world, and this has all been about escaping before she like bangs his head. And the movie just kind of ends with her glancing at the camera like a sort of knowing like, yeah, I'm getting out. And it's a really solid ending, and I think it manages to add enough to it and like have a really distinct ending from the first one, despite the fact that it's again doing some night vision, because it can do this sort of like extra element where one of the humans, quote unquote, is has turned, is working with the villain. I think it managed to do that all quite well. So. No, I like the ending a lot. Because that was my big worry at the start of the movie. I was like, oh, but the ending was so good in the first one. Like, can they top that? And I don't know if it tops it per se, but it adds so many different elements to it that I think it stands out and doesn't just feel like a repeat.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I don't know, like some sequels they kind of feel like like an add-on, like where it's like it's not necessarily trying to do something completely different or like just do the same story, but like, with like a new character or whatever. But instead it's like, no, we're being additive. We're taking the first one and we're just showing you more, and we're taking stuff that we set up and adding little elements, again, kind of like Resident Evil 3, where it's like, okay, yeah, we're not like doing a whole new scenario. Like, we're staying in the same place as 2, but we're giving you like new perspectives, and it's like the same city, but it's like new locations and some new characters, but you still run into some familiar stuff. That's what it kind of feels like, but it's so well done though. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like, oh yeah, you're just retreading the same stuff. It's like, oh no, like you're taking what was already good and then kind of giving it a little new spin or
expanding.
It's like, yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's one of the things that I think is really impressive is that it's set in the same building, but I never felt like I was bored of the location. If anything, the fact that we had some familiarity with the layout of the apartments and the stairwell actually added to the tension, because again, it's that thing of there's a great sequence in Dead Space 2, again, another video game,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly. But there's a great sequence about 2/3 or so into that game where you actually go back to the original ship from the first game, and that section, like going through that ship, not knowing, like, you're waiting for the things to happen, waiting for something to eventually jump out at you, is super eerie. And I think that's a lot of what I get from the start of this movie when they're like wandering through the stairwell in the halls, and you're like, well, when's the thing coming? And they come into the foyer and you can see the handcuff hanging from the stair, banister, and the blood on the floor and everything else. Like, it really plays with we're genuinely coming in and just sort of like having the aftermath of what we had before play into what the setup of this movie and these characters and how they react to things. It makes that's why I think it makes it for such a good double feature, is that in many ways it does feel like one big 3-hour movie. And
it's good because each one is like pretty short, that it's like you could kind of squeeze them together and have a pretty reasonable movie.
There's a couple of maybe set piece moments that I want to mention. One of the SWAT team members, sort of the more angrier one, he has a great sequence where he's separated from the others and he's trapped in one of the apartments. And I love how all the apartments have the same layout, because they should. It's the same building, right? So typically, they will have the same layout. Which meant sometimes you didn't realize which apartment you were in until there was a sign that you were in certain places. But there's a sequence where he's trapped in the hallway and he's trying to like sort of like barricade the various doors and stuff. But he ends up with a zombie on either side. And it's a really good little sequence, and then he has to run to the bathroom, and the scene ends with him just shooting himself in the bathroom because he doesn't want to become one of them.
There was a zombie in the bathroom too, right?
Yeah, he had to sort of like fight that out. So it ends up
being like 3 sides.
Yeah, and he can't get out of the bathroom, so he just puts a gun in his mouth and kills himself. So no, it escalates. It gets tense and more tense and whatever. What's kind of funny though is that the kids, after when they interrogate the kid that's turned into a zombie, the other two are just sort of crying and screaming, and they lock them into like a closet, and like they put like a bookshelf against it so they can't get out. And all I could think at the end of the movie was like, wait, those two kids are still just trapped in a closet in the building. And they mentioned though that they're going to burn the building to the ground. So I'm like, well, I guess those kids are just going to die.
Yeah.
Poor sods. Oh well.
It's so I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how to feel about the characters or about these kid characters, but because you don't really get a ton of their personality. But the one thing I do keep thinking about though is man, how much it must suck that you were just hanging out with your friends and just one little bad decision of, hey, let's go inside and check what's going on, just leads to this fate.
Yeah, I think it goes back again to their reaction and them using the gun and stuff like that. I think those things make them feel like real people, even if they don't have a lot of character, but they feel real because of how out of their depth they are in the situation and how scared they are once they get in. Because we didn't even mention that before the SWAT team come in, the helicopter or whoever outside starts taking shots at them through the window. Yeah. Which again was a choice that the priest makes, because in the first half of the movie, before we get the other perspective, at one point the priest is called on the radio and they say, hey, we see some civilians at a window, what should we do? And I don't think we get to hear what he says to the radio, but later on they start taking shots at them, so we have to assume the priest made that call, that he's the one who said, no, take them out, no survivors, no witnesses, kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's, despite the fact that it's set in the same location and it uses a lot of the same elements, it somehow never feels like it's just doing the same thing again, and I think that is super impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good expansion. It's a good expansion to everything the first movie did, and uses all the elements to build upon what was already there. It never just feels like it's just a redo. So yeah, it's a really good sequel.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I had I think I had seen it once before because I couldn't really remember it too well, but then once it kind of started going, I was like, oh wait, no, I remember kind of this premise and stuff, but I was still pretty excited for it. It's it still felt exciting and new and fresh, and yeah, and again, the first one is so good that I don't know, even if it was like retreading it, like I don't know, I did like going back like to this apartment building, and yeah, like I was excited when they go back to the penthouse and see like the stuff again. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, talking again about the reverence of the camera, even the building itself, like I think it's notable that this one, there's a scene at the start where the SWAT team are in their van and they're just talking about the cameras and like getting them set up. Mm-hmm. But when they get out of the van and they're walking through the crowd and like going to the quarantine little like tent that's leading into the building, that's when the titles start playing. That's when it comes up saying, so and so present, so and so film, and then eventually it says Rec 2. I think it's interesting, that a lot of found footage movies don't do that. They don't do traditional like titles at the start because they want it to feel more like, well, found footage, like it's real, like we just found this somewhere, so there's no title at the start. This doesn't do that, which I respect. It's actually kind of refreshing that it still treats it like a movie. It's like, yeah, it's found footage, but it's still a movie, so let's just not pretend otherwise.
I like that too.
Yeah. But also just the idea that, it's something that a lot of movies do, is they'll have the titles come up one by one, sort of like interspersed as something's happening, to sort of almost add to the suspense of like what's going on in that opening. And I think it adds to the reverence of the building, because it's when they start walking towards the building, it's like, okay, so-and-so presents. And then you get another bit of them walking in. It's like, even the idea that it's treating the building as like, hey, you're excited to go in there, so we're hyping it up with the extra little pauses, with the titles. It's a little thing that a lot of movies do, but I think it makes me realize again like how much the first movie like earned this, because this wouldn't work if the first movie was mediocre, right? It only works because the first movie was so good and we're excited to go back in. Yeah. So it expands on it, but it treats the first movie with the respect of, this movie exists because that first one was good and successful, because it was successful in achieving what it did with this place, with these characters, with these zombies, but not to the point where you get like sequels where all it is references to the first one because it's got no new ideas. It's not that.
And it expands the mythology without like, I don't know, being like too over explainy, like because sometimes that's the problem with like a sequel where it's like, all right, well now we got to go into the backstory and explain what this person was or how this came to be, and they do add some like new information, but it never feels like stuff that's just kind of wedged in there for sequel's sake. It's like it's stuff that all makes sense, and
because there's not really much more to the backstory in terms of the possession itself. Is the details we get is that there's other kids and examples that they're working on, but it's really the only real element that's added to it is the idea that this wasn't just one priest, because I think in the first movie maybe it felt implied that it was just this one priest who was trying to do this on his own. This kind of reveals that no, this was approved by the Vatican. The Vatican knew about this, and they were like, this was like the secret like Vatican like secret service. I don't know, like they're trying to like deal with this in the hush hush. Like I don't know. But it all worked and it all makes sense, and it's not that thing where I'm trying to think of a sequel that does it, because there's tons of them that do, but like like a new Terminator, like Dark Fate, which isn't terrible, but it feels like it's mostly just trying to recreate moments from the first movies. It's just referencing things because of nostalgia. It reveres the first movie, but it doesn't rely on it, and that's good. So yeah, I guess that about does it. Unless there's anything else that I've not mentioned that you want to.
No, I mean, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. Okay, well in that case, Timmy, rate it.
I think I'll give it a straight 8. I think it's really fun, really solid. I still do prefer the first one, but I mean, as far as sequels go, this is definitely one of the better ones, and it's it's pretty lean, entertaining throughout, and it's a good time.
Yeah, I gave this a straight 8 when I saw it, and I'm probably still going to give it a straight 8, but I have to admit, it was actually even a little bit better than I remembered it, to the point where I was considering even maybe bumping it to the 8.5. I don't know if I outright will, but it is tempting. It's definitely a really, really great sequel, and it's one where I wouldn't say, you don't have to see 3 and 4, I don't think. Not to spoil like our thoughts on those. That's it. I've only seen those once, so maybe I'll have more nuanced thoughts once we watch them again at some point later. But I would say that Rec 2 is required viewing. It's not like Halloween, right, where you've watched Halloween, okay, that's all you need to see. If you want to do some fun sequels, you can, but you don't need to see anything else from Halloween. You don't have to see anything else from, say, I don't know, Hellraiser, right? Even if 2 and 3 aren't bad, or, like, there's lots of franchises where, the first one is the one you need to see. Everything after that's just kind of optional. And in some cases actively discouraged, depending on what you're talking about. But I would say that Rec 2, if you like Rec 1, Rec 2 is a must-watch, because it feels like the natural second half of the story.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Agree with that.
So, there you go. Well, if you made it this far into the review, put the words... I don't know. Rocket? Because they kill a zombie with a firework, with the rocket? Yes, rocket. Put the word rocket into the comments to let us know you got to the end. Tim, you're going to pose for the thumbnails, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. These poses are getting wackier and wackier, Tim. But yeah, let us know what you think of Rec 2 in the comments, of course. You can like and subscribe, as we mentioned earlier, as well, of course, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, super important. All of that helps us out a bunch. Catch us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight for updates and other things and whatever. Go and have a look. But otherwise, that is us. So hopefully you've been enjoying Zombie Month. We have one more zombie movie, I think, left, if all goes to plan. And it's a nice, big, interesting film that we're both watching for the first time to round out Zombie Month. So look forward to that.
Oh, okay.
Tim's just remembering what the last one is. So thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.